On Saturday, June 6th, Lynn and LaRouche warned of the catastrophic consequences that would occur were Russia and China to agree to drop the US dollar as the international reserve currency. An immediate breakdown of the functioning of US federal and state governments and a disaster in Europe would occur, leading to the entire world system breaking down. This circumstance could have and still can be avoided. LaRouche had prescribed the emergency measures necessary to treat a collapsing dollar in a policy initiative launched in July to September 2007. LaRouche demanded protection of the dollar on which the world's economy rests by initiating an emergency reorganization of the world financial system, including freezing or eliminating speculative financial debt and any usurious financial contracts between nations. Financial obligations that present themselves as useful to society will be protected and included in the creation of a new credit system based on the unique Hamiltonian form of U.S. Constitution, which allows for the generation of sovereign credit. In order to recognize other nations as part of the new credit system, the United States will make agreements with sovereign nations, thereby validating their money. The massive persuasion represented by Russia, China, and India in cooperation with the United States will enforce this policy. They, and any other willing sovereign nations, will begin a long-term credit-driven recovery for the world and control financial and economic policy. Financiers of the system of empire will be removed from control over governments, and nations will no longer be treated as colonial relics of the British Empire. But since that kind of United States-based reorganization has until now been prevented, forcing nations to adapt to the accelerating disintegration of the world economy, Russia is only thinking in monetarist terms of the survival of the fittest. It is willing to let the dollar go to gain a brief reprieve from the pressure of its outstanding foreign debt, therefore pressuring China to engage in such monetarist games and initiate a dumping of the dollar. Let's look at this more closely. Continuing his stance from the delusional London G20, this past weekend at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, Russian President Medvedev's keynote speech was a precise echo of what British drug pusher and currency speculator George Soros has spent the recent months touting: a supranational currency that would grow out of a multi-currency reserve system. Assuring everyone of predestined post-crisis period, Medvedev focused the conference on the topic of changing the international reserve currency from the dollar to other models, blaming the dollar system for the current crisis. At the same time, Martin Gilman, a London School of Economics graduate, formerly an IMF representative in Moscow, recently published an article, "Ruble Reserve Currency May Not Be So Crazy," calling for Russia and China to drop the dollar, saying these nations have only refrained from dumping U.S. Treasury securities because of a temporary strengthening of the dollar, but soon the stampede will really begin. How this process is being reflected in China can be seen in the London Financial Times June 8th drooling over the fact that China's Guo Shuqing, chairman of China's second-largest bank, has discussed making the renminbi an alternative currency to the dollar for financing trade, saying that his voice now joins a chorus from senior government officials on currency matters that together reflect concerns about the stability of the US dollar and several efforts to promote the use of the renminbi more widely. What is the Obama administration's response to this action that would lead to the immediate disintegration of the world economy? As Treasury Secretary Geithner just promised China in a recent visit, we have a plan to uphold the dollar, tighten belts, and cut throats. What else do you expect? As we have been documenting on this site in recent days, Obama is effectively Tony Blair's de facto British agent, operating against U.S. interests, completely on board with Blair's post-Westphalian, post-nation-state world. So don't expect anything from Obama. The American people and the U.S. presidency must wake up to the sober fact of the matter that the only solution is to reorganize the U.S. presidency with Lynn and LaRouche guiding the helm in initiating the referenced transformation of the world system.
People are looking at the crisis that they want to look at. They're looking at the issues they wish to look at. They're looking at the problems they like to talk about. They are not facing the real deadly danger here. We are now in the process of a general breakdown crisis of the financial, monetary, and physical economic systems of the entire planet. There's been no such thing in all known history as history at any one time in this planet of this type. Certainly not in what we call normally ancient history since 1700 BC and so forth, up to the present time. There is no precedent in that known history for anything like which is coming down on us right now. Nonetheless, since the problem is largely only money, and since if we can create a new credit system to replace the bankrupt present money system, we can prevent a physical breakdown in terms of the world economy. This will require agreements between the United States, Russia, China, India, and other countries. Those agreements can be put through if the right person is in charge, and I'm the person. And we can take the official institutions of government and simply by getting them together to realize what the problem is and what has to be done with a clear message from me on what they have to do, they can do it, and we can come out of this alive. That's where we are right now. That's reality.